Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights of Portland Memorial Hospital cast a harsh glow across the emergency room floor as Sarah Thompson rushed between patients. At 52, her auburn hair now streaked with silver, she moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent decades in these hallways. 20 years as a nurse had taught her to compartmentalize her emotions, to keep her personal life separate from her professional duties. But tonight, that carefully constructed wall was about to crumble. Trauma coming in. Car accident victim, female, late 20s, a voice called out over the intercom. Sarah grabbed a trauma gown and gloves, mentally preparing herself for whatever lay ahead. The ambulance doors burst open, and paramedics wheeled in a young woman with blood matting her blonde hair. Vitals stable, but she's got a nasty laceration on her right shoulder and possible concussion, the paramedic reported as they transferred the patient to the trauma bay. Sarah began her assessment methodically, checking pupil response and vital signs. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked the semi-conscious woman. Emma Collins," the woman mumbled, her eyes fluttering. Sarah nodded reassuringly. "You're going to be okay, Emma. We need to clean this shoulder wound." As Sarah carefully cut away the blood-soaked fabric of Emma's blouse, her hands suddenly froze. There, partially obscured by blood but unmistakable, was a crescent-shaped birthmark on the woman's right shoulder. A birthmark identical to the one her daughter Madison had been born with. The trauma room seemed to tilt sideways. Sarah's vision tunneled, and a high-pitched ringing filled her ears. 20 years of wondering, of grief and unanswered questions crashed down on her in that single moment of recognition. "Nurse Thompson? Are you all right?" Dr. Patel's voice seemed to come from miles away. Sarah's hands trembled uncontrollably. I need a minute," she managed to say, backing away from the table. "Can someone cover for me?" She stumbled into the staff bathroom, locking the door behind her before collapsing against the wall. Her heart hammered against her ribs as memories flooded back with violent clarity. That perfect Saturday in June 1999, the sound of her twins' laughter drifting through the kitchen window as they played in the backyard. The devastating silence when she called them for lunch, the abandoned stuffed animals on the grass, the open gate. "Madison," she whispered, her voice breaking on the name she hadn't spoken aloud in years. Sarah splashed cold water on her face, trying to regain her composure. It couldn't be possible. Thousands of women could have similar birthmarks, but the shape, the exact position, it was too perfect a match to be coincidence. When she returned to the floor, Dr. Patel approached her with concern. "Sarah, what happened back there? You look like you've seen a ghost." In many ways she had. "I'm fine," she lied, "just feeling a bit lightheaded." Through the curtain she could see another nurse finishing the wound care on Emma Collins. The young woman was more alert now, answering questions about her medical history. 28 years old, born in Portland, blood type AB negative, the same rare type as Madison. "I need to see her chart," Sarah whispered to herself. As her shift ended, Sarah found herself sitting in her car in the hospital parking lot, unable to drive home. If Emma Collins was Madison, then where was Mackenzie? Were both her daughters alive? And who was responsible for stealing them away? For 20 years, Sarah had lived with the hollow ache of not knowing. Now, a single crescent-shaped birthmark had ignited something dangerous within her: hope. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, a new determination crystallizing in her mind. If that woman was indeed her daughter, Sarah would move heaven and earth to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Sarah's small craftsman home felt cavernous that night. Once filled with children's laughter, it now echoed with each of her footsteps as she moved through the dimly lit hallway to the spare bedroom. With trembling hands, she unlocked the bottom drawer of an old desk, her sanctuary of memories. Inside lay the remnants of a shattered life, police reports, newspaper clippings, and a leather-bound photo album she hadn't opened in years. Tonight, she couldn't resist its pull. The first photo stabbed at her heart. Madison and Mackenzie on their 8th birthday, identical down to their missing front teeth and the mischievous sparkle in their blue eyes. Madison with her crescent-shaped birthmark proudly displayed on her right shoulder, Mackenzie with her matching mark on her left wrist. "My girls," Sarah whispered, running her fingers over their faces. She closed her eyes and suddenly it was June 15th, 1999 again. The kitchen smelled of freshly baked cookies. The twins' laughter floated through the open window as they played hide-and-seek in the backyard. Sarah had called out, "Lunch in 5 minutes, my little monsters." Their cheerful, "Okay, Mum," was the last thing she ever heard them say. When she stepped outside 15 minutes later, she found only abandoned jump ropes, a scattered tea party set, and the back gate swinging open in the summer breeze. The memories came in painful flashes. The frantic search through the neighborhood, neighbors forming search parties, police combing local parks, David, her then husband, rushing home from work, his face ashen. "How you were supposed to watch them," he had shouted that night, the first crack in their marriage that would eventually shatter completely. 2 years of dead-end leads, false sightings, and diminishing hope had hollowed them both. David moved out on the twins' 10th birthday, unable to bear the constant reminder of their loss. Sarah reached deeper into the drawer and pulled out a small evidence bag containing 2 identical friendship bracelets, half-finished rainbow patterns the twins had been working on the morning they disappeared. The police had found them under the girls' beds, forgotten in their rush to play outside. "Could it really be you, Madison?" Sarah whispered to the photo. Her nurse's training fought against the swell of maternal hope. Coincidences happened. Birthmarks weren't unique identifiers. Yet something deeper than logic drove her now. Sarah pulled her laptop closer, typing Emma Collins, Texas into the search bar. Social media offered fragments, a teaching position at an elementary school in Austin, photos of a smiling blonde woman with friends, a recent engagement announcement. Sarah's phone chimed with a text from her colleague. "Hope you're feeling better. BTW, that accident patient is being discharged tomorrow afternoon." Time was running out. If Emma Collins was truly Madison Thompson, Sarah needed proof before she disappeared again. She laid out the police reports beside her laptop, eyes fixed on the notation about the twins' distinctive birthmarks. Tomorrow, she would need to get closer to Emma Collins, close enough to confirm what her heart already believed. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the silent house, as Sarah prepared for the investigation of her lifetime. Dawn broke over Portland as Sarah arrived at the hospital 3 hours before her scheduled shift. She needed access to Emma Collins's medical records, a clear violation of hospital protocol that could cost her job, but the stakes were too high for caution. The administration floor was nearly empty as Sarah slipped into the records department with her employee badge. With practiced movements, she navigated to Emma's file in the system. "Emma Collins, 28, Sarah murmured, scrolling through the admission details. Born in Portland, Oregon. The birth date listed was April 3rd, 1997, 2 years before Madison's actual birth. Either this wasn't Madison, or someone had falsified the records. But as Sarah dug deeper, inconsistencies emerged. Emma's earliest medical records only began at age 8, with a note about records transferred from previous provider. The blood type matched Madison's rare AB negative. Most tellingly, under distinguishing marks, someone had noted crescent birthmark right shoulder. Sarah's heart raced as she found contact information, a Texas address and phone number. Emma was scheduled for discharge at 2 p.m. Time was running out. She printed the records and was about to log out when she noticed a name under emergency contact. Dr. Robert Collins, listed as Emma's adoptive father. Adoptive. The word jumped off the screen. "Nurse Thompson, you're in early." Sarah nearly jumped out of her skin. Dr. Maxwell, the overnight attending, stood in the doorway. "Just checking on a patient from last night," she said, slipping the papers into her scrubs pocket. "The accident victim. She's doing well. Cleared for discharge this afternoon." He paused. "You seemed shaken when she came in. Everything okay?" Sarah forced a smile. "Just reminded me of someone." Back in the safety of a supply closet, Sarah examined the papers. Emma Collins had been adopted by Robert and Margaret Collins of Austin, Texas in 1999, the same year Madison disappeared. The coincidences were mounting beyond statistical probability. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her friend in the lab. "Ran that DNA test as a favor. Results attached. You owe me dinner." With shaking hands, Sarah opened the attachment. She had submitted Emma's DNA from a discarded water cup against her own. The results showed a 99.9% match for mother-daughter relation. Her knees buckled. Emma Collins was Madison Thompson. Her daughter was alive. Tears blurred her vision as 20 years of grief transformed into something new, determination. If Madison was alive, then Mackenzie might be too. But approaching Emma directly could be disastrous. Emma had grown up as someone else with no memory of her real mother or her twin sister. Sarah needed expert help. She scrolled through her contacts until she found Marcus Reed, a former police detective who had worked on the twins case and now ran a private investigation firm. "Marcus," "It's Sarah Thompson. I've found Madison," she whispered into the phone, "and I need your help to find Mackenzie." As she hung up, Sarah glanced at her watch. She had 4 hours until Emma's discharge, 4 hours to decide whether to confront the daughter who had no idea who she really was. Marcus Reed arrived at the coffee shop across from the hospital with the same weathered face and keen eyes Sarah remembered from 20 years ago. Now in his 60s, his hair had gone completely grey, but his detective instincts remained razor sharp. "I need to see everything," he said, bypassing pleasantries. Sarah slid a folder across the table containing Emma's medical records, the DNA results and photocopies from the original investigation. "It's her, Marcus. It's really Madison." As Marcus reviewed the documents, his professional composure cracked. "I'll be damned," he whispered. "After all these years, I need to find Mackenzie too," Sarah said, "and I need to understand who did this to my family." Marcus nodded. "Let's start at the beginning. Who had access to the girls? Who knew their routines?" Sarah listed everyone: the school teachers, neighbors, the mail carrier who always chatted with the twins. Then she remembered something that had seemed inconsequential at the time. "Dr. Richard Holloway," she said suddenly. "He was their pediatrician since birth, always commented how special and perfect they were, especially because they were identical twins." Sarah pulled out her phone and searched for the old police files. "Look at this. Holloway was consulted during the investigation about possible trauma the girls might experience. He had access to all their medical records, knew our home layout from house calls when they had chickenpox." Marcus's expression darkened. "Holloway. I remember interviewing him. Nothing stood out, but he was unusually interested in the case details." Sarah pulled up Holloway's current information. He retired from his main practice in 2001, just 2 years after the girls disappeared, but still runs a small private practice. "That's strange timing, isn't it?" "Very," Marcus agreed. "What would make a successful pediatrician suddenly scale back at the height of his career?" Sarah remembered something else. He always photographed his patients for their files, said it helped him remember each child's unique needs. Marcus was already typing on his laptop. "Dr. Richard Holloway, now 71, living in West Hills, the wealthiest neighborhood in Portland. Interesting career for a pediatrician on a normal salary." "I need to see him," Sarah said firmly. "Whoa, slow down. If he's involved, you can't just confront him." But Sarah was already formulating a plan. "I won't. I'll schedule an appointment as a new patient's grandmother. He hasn't seen me in 20 years. Marcus sighed. "First, we need to secure evidence. I'll start looking into Holloway's finances around 1999. You focus on finding a connection between him and the Collins family." As they finalized their strategy, Sarah's phone chimed with a hospital alert. Emma Collins was being discharged, 2 hours early. "She's leaving." Sarah stood abruptly. "I need to see her one more time." "Sarah, wait," Marcus cautioned, but she was already rushing across the street. Sarah reached the hospital lobby just as Emma was signing discharge papers. Up close, without the distraction of blood and trauma, the resemblance was unmistakable. The same delicate nose Sarah had kissed goodnight thousands of times, Madison's thoughtful eyes. Emma looked up, catching Sarah staring. "Oh, hello, were you one of my nurses last night?" Sarah's voice caught in her throat. "Yes. Just checking you're okay before you leave." "That's kind of you," Emma smiled. "Everyone here has been wonderful." "Where are you headed now?" Sarah asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Back to Texas tomorrow. Just wrapping up a teaching conference here." As Emma turned to leave, Sarah noticed a small worn teddy bear keychain on her bag, identical to Madison's favorite childhood toy. Some memories ran too deep to be erased. "Safe travels," Sarah managed to say, as her daughter, a stranger who didn't recognize her own mother, walked out of the hospital doors. Sarah stood frozen, watching until Emma disappeared from sight. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Got appointment with Holloway tomorrow at 9 a.m. Be careful." The game was on. The waiting room of Dr. Holloway's private practice exuded wealth and exclusivity. Original artwork adorned walls of muted sage, and plush leather chairs sat empty. Sarah was the only patient scheduled that morning. She had aged her appearance with grey-tinted hairspray and reading glasses, calling herself Margaret Wilson, a grandmother concerned about her grandchild's mysterious allergies. The disguise felt flimsy, but it was all she had. "Mrs. Wilson," a young receptionist smiled. "Dr. Holloway will see you now." Sarah's heart hammered as she followed the woman down the hallway. Photos lined the walls, children of various ages with their families, all beaming beside the distinguished doctor. Sarah scanned them quickly, looking for familiar faces. Then she saw him, the man who had examined her daughters for 8 years. Richard Holloway had aged gracefully, his once dark hair now silver, but his piercing blue eyes remained unchanged. He rose from behind an imposing mahogany desk, extending his hand. "Mrs. Wilson, a pleasure to meet you. Please have a seat." Sarah lowered herself into the chair, fighting the urge to scream accusations at him. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Doctor. Always happy to help a concerned grandparent," he replied with practiced warmth. "Tell me about your grandchild's symptoms." As Sarah recited the fabricated medical concerns, she studied Holloway carefully. His office was a shrine to his own success. Awards, certificates, and more photographs. One wall featured what he called his special families, elegantly framed portraits of children with their parents. "Lovely photos," Sarah commented, gesturing toward them. Pride flickered across Holloway's face. "Ah, yes, these are some of my most successful placements. Patients." He cleared his throat. "Families I've worked with for many years." The slip sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Placements. Do you do adoption consultations as well, Dr. Holloway?" she asked innocently. Something shuttered behind his eyes. "Occasionally I help connect deserving families with children in need, a peripheral service." Sarah nodded, noticing how his right hand twitched slightly. "How noble. It must be rewarding to create families." "Some children simply belong with different parents than those they're born to," he replied, his tone suddenly philosophical. "Nature makes mistakes sometimes. I correct them." The casual arrogance in his statement made her stomach turn. This man had decided her daughters belonged with other families, that she wasn't worthy of them. "Now, about those allergies," he continued, returning to the pretense of the appointment. Sarah forced herself through the remainder of the consultation, gathering every detail she could. His mannerisms, the names on the certificates, the families in the photos. As she was leaving, she noticed a partially open filing cabinet with color-coded folders. "Bathroom?" she asked the receptionist, who pointed down the hall. With the receptionist distracted by a phone call, Sarah quickly slipped into Holloway's office again and snapped photos of the special families wall. The last photo made her freeze, a young girl who looked remarkably like Mackenzie, standing beside a smiling Latino family. The caption read, "The Martinez Family, San Diego, 2007. Sarah's hands trembled as she texted the photo to Marcus. "Possible lead on Mackenzie. Martinez Family, San Diego." Leaving the clinic, Sarah felt Holloway's gaze following her. Had she been too obvious? Too inquisitive? She couldn't shake the feeling that beneath his professional veneer, he had recognized her too. In her car, Sarah's phone rang. "Marcus." "I've got something," he said without preamble. Holloway made 6 cash deposits of exactly $50,000 each between June and December 1999. "And I found a Sophia Martinez, 28, elementary school art teacher in San Diego. Facebook photos show striking resemblance to your Emma." Sarah's breath caught. Sophia. Could be Mackenzie. "There's more," Marcus continued. "The Collins family made a charitable donation of $300,000 to Holloway's Children's Future Foundation in July 1999. The pieces were fitting together into a horrifying puzzle. "He sold my daughters," Sarah whispered, "for $300,000 each." Rain pounded against Sarah's windshield as she pulled into the parking lot of a small lab on the outskirts of Portland. Marcus waited inside, hunched over a laptop, with the determined expression she remembered from the original investigation. "I've got the test results," he said as she slid into the booth across from him. Sarah had managed to obtain Emma's DNA sample from the hospital, a violation that could end her career, and now the truth lay in a sealed envelope between them. "Open it," she whispered. Marcus slid out the paper. Maternity test between Sarah Thompson and subject EC shows 99.7% probability of biological mother-child relationship. He looked up. "It's official. Emma Collins is Madison Thompson." The confirmation hit Sarah like a physical blow. For 20 years, she'd lived with the agony of not knowing if her daughters were alive or dead. Now half of that mystery was solved. Madison was alive, thriving, utterly unaware of her true identity. "We need to find Sophia Martinez," Sarah said, wiping away tears. "If Emma is Madison, then Sophia must be Mackenzie." Marcus nodded. "I've booked you on a flight to San Diego tomorrow morning. I'll stay here and continue investigating Holloway. But Sarah," he hesitated, "what's your plan when you find Sophia? You can't just walk up and announce you're her mother." Sarah had wrestled with this question all night. I need to see her first, confirm it's really her, then I don't know. These young women have lived their entire adult lives with different identities. The truth will shatter everything they believe about themselves. Don't you think I know that? Sarah's voice cracked. My daughters were stolen from me. Their true identities were stolen from them. But they deserve to know the truth even if it hurts. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Sofia Martinez teaches art at Westview Elementary. Her class ends at 3:30 tomorrow. Here's her address and the school location. Thank you, Sarah said, gathering the materials. What about Holloway? I'm meeting a former colleague at the FBI tomorrow. If we can prove Holloway was running an illegal adoption ring, this becomes a federal case. Kidnapping, trafficking, fraud. As Sarah stood to leave, Marcus caught her arm. Be careful in San Diego. If Holloway gets wind of what we're doing, he might alert the Martinez family. He has no reason to suspect anything, Sarah assured him, though uncertainty gnawed at her. That night, Sarah packed lightly for San Diego, her mind racing with possibilities. The Martinez family photos showed a loving home. Like the Collins family, they appeared wealthy, educated, and devoted to their daughter. How would they react to learning their beloved Sofia was obtained through a criminal enterprise? How would Sofia herself process such devastating news? Sarah's phone chimed with a text from Marcus. Check your email. Found school newsletter with clear photo of Sofia. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the attachment. The resemblance knocked the breath from her lungs. Despite different hairstyles and 20 years of separation, Emma and Sofia could still pass for identical twins. More importantly, in one photo where Sofia gestured toward student artwork, a familiar crescent-shaped birthmark was clearly visible on her left wrist, the perfect mirror to Madison's right shoulder mark. Mackenzie, Sarah whispered to the image. My baby girl. Another text from Marcus arrived. Flight confirmed, boarding pass attached, and Sarah, remember, observe only tomorrow. Don't approach until we have a proper plan. Sarah sent a quick acknowledgement, though her heart rebelled against such caution. After 20 years of emptiness, both her daughters were alive. The urge to run to them, to embrace them, and never let go again was almost overwhelming. But Marcus was right. This revelation would upend multiple lives. It required delicacy and planning. Tomorrow, she would see her second daughter from afar, gathering the final confirmation she needed before taking the irrevocable step of revealing the truth. Sleep eluded her that night as she stared at the ceiling, wondering if somewhere in Texas, Emma was having inexplicable dreams about a twin sister she couldn't remember. San Diego greeted Sarah with brilliant sunshine that belied the darkness of her mission. She rented a nondescript sedan at the airport and navigated to Westview Elementary, arriving an hour before school dismissal. Parking across the street, she pulled a wide-brimmed hat low over her face and waited. Her phone buzzed with updates from Marcus. FBI contact interested, requesting more evidence before opening case. And later, checked Holloway's calendar. He's meeting with lawyers tomorrow. At 3:25, children began streaming out of the school building. Sarah's breath caught as a slender woman with honey-blonde hair emerged, high-fiving students as they passed. Even from a distance, the resemblance to Emma was uncanny. The same graceful posture, the same tilt of the head when listening. Sofia Martinez wore a paint-splattered smock over a floral dress, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail that revealed the crescent birthmark on her left wrist. She laughed at something a colleague said, the sound carrying across the schoolyard, a laugh Sarah had heard 1,000 times in her dreams. Mackenzie, she whispered, clutching the steering wheel to keep from rushing across the street. Sofia chatted with parents, helped load a few children into cars, then walked to a blue Prius in the teacher's parking lot. Sarah started her engine, following at a careful distance as Sofia drove through residential streets to a modest bungalow with bright yellow trim. A man emerged from the house, tall, bearded, mid-30s, greeting Sofia with a kiss. Her husband, Sarah realized. The life her daughter had built was real and substantial, filled with people who loved her. Sarah watched as they entered the house together, lights flickering on inside. The urge to walk up to the door, to knock and introduce herself, was almost irresistible. 20 years of separation ended by a simple conversation, but Marcus's warning echoed in her mind. This wasn't just about reuniting with her daughters. It was about exposing a criminal enterprise that had affected countless families. Rushing in could jeopardize everything. With enormous effort, Sarah drove away, checking into a nearby hotel. She spread her evidence across the bed, photos of Emma and Sofia, their birthmarks, their remarkable similarities despite decades apart. Tomorrow, she would observe Sophia again, perhaps find a way to obtain DNA confirmation as she had with Emma. Her phone rang. Marcus. "Did you find her?" he asked without preamble. "Yes." Sarah's voice trembled. "It's her, Marcus. Same birthmark, same mannerisms. She's an art teacher, just like Mackenzie always wanted to be. She even does that thing with her hands when she talks, just like her sister." "Sarah, listen carefully." Marcus's tone turned urgent. "I've been digging into Holloway's records. He didn't just sell your daughters. I've identified at least 18 other children who disappeared under suspicious circumstances, all former patients of his." Sarah sat heavily on the edge of the bed. 18? All between 1990 and 2005. All sold to wealthy families through his foundation. Some were claimed as private adoptions. Others simply vanished like Madison and Mackenzie. Most were under 10 years old enough to remember their birth families, but young enough to eventually adapt to new identities. "My God," Sarah whispered. "He's been operating a child trafficking ring for decades. The FBI is officially interested. They're sending someone to meet us when you return, but Sarah..." Marcus paused. "Holloway knows something's up. He's been calling contacts in law enforcement, asking about reopened missing children cases." Fear coursed through Sarah. "Does he know about me? About my trip to San Diego?" "I don't think so, but we need to move quickly. Get the DNA confirmation if you can, then come back to Portland. Don't approach Sophia yet." After hanging up, Sarah stared at the photos spread before her. The evidence was mounting, but she needed absolute certainty before bringing the full weight of federal law enforcement into her daughters' lives. Tomorrow, somehow, she would get that final proof. The San Diego morning dawned foggy, matching Sarah's uneasy state of mind. She checked out of her hotel early, drove to a coffee shop near Westview Elementary, and positioned herself at an outdoor table with a clear view of the school entrance. Her phone chimed with a text from Marcus. "Found archives of Holloway's medical practice in county records. Requesting access today. Be careful." At 7:45, Sophia's blue Prius pulled into the teacher's lot. Sarah watched as her daughter emerged, carrying a tote bag overflowing with art supplies. A paper coffee cup dangled from her fingers as she navigated toward the building. Sarah's heart raced. This was her chance. Timing her approach carefully, she stood up and started walking toward the school, deliberately crossing Sophia's path. As they passed each other, Sarah stumbled slightly, bumping into Sophia. "I'm so sorry," Sarah exclaimed as their coffee cups collided. Both spilled onto the sidewalk. "No problem," Sophia smiled, remarkably unperturbed. "Mondays, right?" "Let me buy you another," Sarah offered, gesturing to the coffee shop. "It's the least I can do." "That's really not necessary." "I insist," Sarah said. "You look like you could use the caffeine before facing a classroom of kids." Sophia laughed, that familiar laugh that twisted Sarah's heart. "Am I that obvious?" "Art teacher," she explained, pointing to paint splatters on her sleeve. "I have a few minutes," Sarah said, walking alongside her daughter back to the coffee shop. Inside, Sarah ordered 2 coffees, watching as Sophia dabbed at the spill on her sleeve with a napkin. Up close, the resemblance to Emma, to Madison, was even more striking. Same eyes, same mannerisms, even the same way of tucking hair behind her ear. "I'm Sarah," she said, offering her hand and her real name without thinking. "Sophia Martinez," her daughter replied. "Do you live around here? I don't think I've seen you before." "Just visiting," Sarah said truthfully. "I used to be a teacher too before I switched to nursing." They chatted briefly about education, art, and the challenges of working with children. When Sophia checked her watch and excused herself, Sarah made her move. "Oh, you dropped this," she said, bending to pick up a napkin Sophia had used. As Sophia turned away with a wave of thanks, Sarah carefully sealed the napkin in a plastic bag, a DNA sample. Back in her rental car, Sarah's hands trembled as she called Marcus. "I got it," she said. "A DNA sample. I'm bringing it back tonight." "Perfect timing," Marcus replied. "I've found something major." Holloway kept detailed records of his special cases, coded files on children with desirable characteristics. Twins, especially identical ones, were his premium product. Sarah felt ill. Product? His words, not mine. The files show he targeted families where he thought children would be easy to acquire. Single parents, financial difficulties, parents who worked long hours. Your situation fit his pattern perfectly. A nurse working shifts, husband often traveling for business. "He planned it," Sarah whispered, the realization dawning. He didn't opportunistically take my girls. He targeted them from the beginning. It goes deeper, Marcus continued. I found a storage unit registered to Holloway's foundation, got a warrant to search it tomorrow morning. And Sarah? The FBI is officially opening an investigation. They want to meet us tomorrow afternoon. Relief and anxiety warred within Sarah. The machinery of justice was finally moving, but what would it mean for her daughters? I'm on the 4:30 flight back to Portland, she said. Have the lab ready for this DNA sample when I land. As she drove to the airport, Sarah cast one last glance at Westview Elementary, where her youngest daughter was teaching art to children the same age Madison and Mackenzie had been when they were taken. Soon, she promised silently, soon you'll know the truth. The Portland lab confirmed what Sarah already knew in her heart. Sophia Martinez was, without question, Mackenzie Thompson. Both daughters were alive, thriving in lives constructed upon elaborate lies. Sarah stood in her kitchen at dawn, staring at the two DNA reports side by side. 20 years of uncertainty had transformed overnight into a complicated reality. Her daughters existed, but as strangers with no memory of their true identities or each other. The FBI wants to move on Holloway today, Marcus said over the phone. They need you to make a statement, but they're concerned about tipping him off before they secure all the evidence. Sarah took a deep breath. I have a better idea. I want to confront him myself, wearing a wire. Absolutely not, Marcus objected. It's too dangerous. He's already suspicious. That's exactly why it will work, Sarah insisted. He's wondering if someone's investigating him. Who better to confirm his fears than the mother of the twins he stole? I'll tell him I know everything, but won't go to the police if he explains why he chose my daughters. His ego won't let him resist. After lengthy debate, the FBI reluctantly agreed. By 10 a.m., Sarah was wired with a recording device and given strict instructions. Get Holloway talking about his operation without revealing the ongoing investigation. An hour later, she sat in Holloway's waiting room, this time as herself. When the receptionist stepped away, Sarah walked directly into his office without announcement. Holloway looked up, annoyed at the interruption, then froze as recognition dawned slowly on his face. Sarah Thompson, she said quietly, closing the door behind her. It's been a long time, Dr. Holloway. He recovered quickly, professional smile sliding into place. Mrs. Thompson, what a surprise. It must be, 20 years? 20 years, 3 months and 16 days, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Since the day you stole my daughters. The smile vanished. I don't know what you're talking about. Your daughters disappeared. A terrible tragedy. Madison and Mackenzie didn't disappear, Sarah interrupted, placing Emma's photograph on his desk. They were taken by someone they trusted. By you. Holloway's face remained impassive, but a slight tremor in his hands betrayed him. That's a serious accusation without evidence. I've found Madison, Sarah said calmly. She goes by Emma Collins now. Lives in Texas. Sold to the Collins family for $300,000 in 1999. Holloway's right eye twitched. If you had actual evidence of criminal activity, you'd be here with the police, not alone. I wanted to understand first. Sarah leaned forward. Why my girls? You had hundreds of patients. Why choose them? A flicker of professional pride crossed his face before he could suppress it. Was it because they were identical? Perfect mirror twins with matching birthmarks? Was that why they fetched such a high price? Holloway stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Please leave before I call security. I found Mackenzie too, Sarah continued, ignoring his demand. Or Sophia, as she's called now. The Martinez family paid well for her, didn't they? His composure cracked slightly. The girls have had exemplary lives with their families, better than what you could have provided. The admission hung in the air between them. Sarah fought to keep her expression neutral despite her internal triumph. He'd essentially confessed. How many others were there? She asked softly. Holloway seemed to realize his mistake. His face hardened as he reached for his phone. I'm calling security. Don't bother. Sarah stood. I'm leaving. But this isn't over, Dr. Holloway. You destroyed my family. I won't rest until you answer for that. As she walked out, Sarah caught a glimpse of genuine fear in Holloway's eyes. He would run now, she was certain, but the FBI would be waiting. Outside, she slid into Marcus's car, hands trembling with delayed shock. We got him, Marcus said, listening through an earpiece to the recording. Partial confession. It's enough for the FBI to move. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now, Marcus replied grimly. We wait for him to make a mistake. The The FBI surveillance team reported that Holloway left his office at precisely 2:17 p.m., driving directly to a bank in downtown Portland. There, he emptied a safety deposit box and returned to his home, where he remained for 3 hours before emerging with a small suitcase. "He's running," FBI Special Agent Diana Chen told Sarah and Marcus as they watched live footage from a surveillance van parked near Holloway's neighborhood. "Just as we predicted," Sarah leaned forward, studying the screens. "Where will he go?" "We have agents at the airport, train station, and major highways," Chen explained. "But first, he's making a stop." Holloway's luxury sedan pulled into a storage facility on the outskirts of Portland, the same one Marcus had discovered connected to his foundation. "Perfect," Chen smiled tightly. "We have a warrant for that unit. Let's move." Sarah and Marcus remained in the van while FBI agents silently converged on the storage facility. Through their earpieces, they heard the operation unfold. "Target has entered Unit 247. Standing by." Minutes passed in tense silence. Then, "Target is exiting with documents, moving to intercept." Sarah held her breath as Agent Chen's voice came through clearly. "Dr. Richard Holloway, FBI. We have a warrant to search this storage unit and to place you under arrest for suspicion of kidnapping, child trafficking, and fraud." Through the surveillance camera, they watched Holloway's face drain of color as agents handcuffed him. The documents he'd been carrying scattered across the pavement, file folders with color-coded tabs. An hour later, Sarah stood in the storage unit beside Marcus and Agent Chen, surveying the treasure trove of evidence Holloway had preserved. Filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer meticulously labeled by year. Chen carefully opened the drawer marked 1999. "My God," she whispered. Inside were dozens of folders, each containing photographs, medical records, and detailed assessments of children. Holloway's inventory. A separate binder held what appeared to be contracts, financial arrangements disguised as adoption facilitation fees and medical consultancy. Sarah's hands trembled as she located the folder labeled Thompson, M&M. Inside were photographs of Madison and Mackenzie at their last checkup before disappearing, detailed medical histories, and psychological evaluations Holloway had conducted without Sarah's knowledge. Most disturbing was a document titled Acquisition Strategy that outlined how Holloway had tracked the family's schedule for months, noting when the girls were likely to be in the backyard unsupervised. "He stalked us," Sarah whispered, revulsion climbing her throat. "Planned everything." Another folder contained placement profiles for the Collins and Martinez families, wealthy couples desperate for children who had been rejected by legitimate adoption agencies for various reasons. The Collins had been flagged for the husband's controlling behavior, the Martinez family for previous financial irregularities. "These people weren't just buying children," Marcus observed grimly. "They were buying children they couldn't get through proper channels." Agent Chen extracted a leather-bound ledger from a locked drawer. "Financial records," she confirmed. "Payments ranging from $200,000 to $500,000 per child, depending on desirability factors. Santa twins commanded premium prices, especially identical ones." Sarah couldn't bear to look. "How many children?" Chen flipped through the ledger. "At least 37 documented cases between 1990 and 2005. Your daughters were cases 22 and 23. The scale of Holloway's operation was staggering. For 15 years, he had systematically evaluated children in his care, selected those with desirable characteristics, and sold them to wealthy clients, all while maintaining his reputation as a respected pediatrician. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her voice small against the weight of the evidence surrounding them. "Holloway will be charged federally," Chen explained, "and will begin the process of identifying and locating all the children in these records. Some may be adults now, like your daughters." Sarah stared at the photograph of her smiling twins, taken just weeks before they vanished from her life. "And my girls." Chen's expression softened slightly. "That's complicated. Legally, they were kidnapped, but emotionally, they've spent 20 years with families they believe are their own. We'll need to approach this carefully." Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate balance required. The truth would shatter multiple lives, not just her daughters, but the families who had raised them, however illegitimately. "I want to be there," she said firmly. "When you tell them." Chen hesitated, then nodded. "We'll arrange it, but first, we need to question Holloway." As they exited the storage unit, Sarah felt a strange mixture of vindication and dread. Justice was finally in motion, but the hardest part still lay ahead. Holloway sat in the FBI interrogation room, his imperious demeanor diminished by the standard-issue jumpsuit and handcuffs. Across the table, Agent Chen laid out photographs from the storage unit, one by one. Sarah watched through one-way glass, Marcus at her side. The room felt ice-cold, yet sweat beaded on her forehead as she studied the man who had destroyed her family. 37 children, Dr. Holloway, Chen stated flatly. 37 lives you stole. Holloway's attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit, interjected, "My client maintains his innocence. Those records merely document private adoptions he facilitated. Private adoptions don't require stalking families, creating acquisition strategies, or selling children to the highest bidder," Chen countered, sliding Madison and Mackenzie's file forward. "Let's discuss the Thompson twins." A flicker of something, pride perhaps, crossed Holloway's face before his attorney warned him to remain silent. "We don't need his confession," Marcus murmured to Sarah. "The evidence is overwhelming." But Sarah wanted more than evidence. She wanted understanding. "I need to speak with him," she said suddenly. "Absolutely not," Marcus objected. "His attorney won't allow it." "Then we make him want it," Sarah insisted. After heated discussion, Chen agreed to try. She re-entered the interrogation room with a new approach. "Your client faces multiple life sentences," she told Holloway's attorney. "But we might consider sentencing recommendations if Dr. Holloway provides insights that help us understand the psychological impact on the victims. Mrs. Thompson has requested a few minutes to ask questions about her daughter's case." The attorney started to refuse, but Holloway himself interrupted. "I'll speak with her." 20 minutes later, Sarah sat across from her daughter's kidnapper, struggling to contain the rage that threatened to consume her. "Why?" she asked simply. Holloway studied her with clinical detachment. They deserved better than a single mother working endless shifts. The Collins and Martinez families could provide every advantage. "They weren't a single mother's children," Sarah corrected him, voice steady despite her fury. "Their father and I were married. We both worked to give them a good life." "A life of mediocrity," Holloway dismissed. "I selected only the most promising children for my program. Your twins were exceptional, perfect mirrors of each other, high cognitive function, rare blood type, aesthetic appeal. They deserved exceptional families." "You mean families who could pay your price?" A thin smile. "Quality placement requires proper compensation." "How did you do it?" Sarah asked, though she already knew from the files. "That day in our backyard?" Something like nostalgia crossed Holloway's face. "Simple, really. I'd observed your Saturday routine for weeks. My associate approached the girls as a new neighbor, asked for help finding a lost puppy. Children are so trusting." The casual cruelty of his statement stole Sarah's breath. "You separated them. Identical twins who had never spent a day apart. Necessary for complete assimilation into their new families," he explained, as if discussing a scientific protocol rather than traumatized children. The premium for twins was substantial, but greater still when sold separately. The Collins and Martinez families each believed they received a unique child. "Did they know?" Sarah asked. "Did these families know the children were kidnapped?" Holloway's expression hardened. "My clients preferred not to inquire too deeply about origins. They received children with clean medical histories and no legal complications. The method of acquisition was immaterial." Behind the glass, Agent Chen nodded to a colleague. They had enough. Sarah stood to leave, but paused. "My daughters grew up without knowing each other existed," she said quietly, "without knowing their true identity or that they were loved and searched for. No amount of money or privilege can compensate for that theft." Holloway leaned forward, handcuffs clinking against the table. "I gave them better lives than you could have. That's not theft, it's improvement." Sarah stared at him, finally seeing clearly the narcissism that had driven his entire operation. "No, Dr. Holloway, you didn't improve lives, you played God with them. And now you'll answer for it." As she walked out, Holloway called after her. "They won't thank you for this truth, Sarah. You'll destroy the only lives they've ever known." The door closed on his words, but they followed Sarah down the hallway, feeding the doubt that had haunted her since finding Emma. Would her daughters want to know the truth, or would they hate her for revealing it? The FBI conference room felt sterile and inadequate for the life-shattering conversations planned for the day. Agent Chen had arranged video calls with both Emma Collins and Sophia Martinez, explaining only that the FBI needed to discuss a case involving their childhood physician, Dr. Holloway. Sarah sat beside Marcus, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. 2 screens were set up at the end of the table, each connected to a separate video call. In minutes, Her daughters would see each other for the first time in 20 years. "Are you sure you want to be present for this?" Chen asked gently. "We can conduct the interviews and prepare them to meet you afterward." Sarah shook her head. "They deserve to hear it from me. I'm their mother." At precisely 1 p.m., both calls connected simultaneously. On the left screen appeared Emma, her blonde hair pulled back professionally, seated in what looked like a home office in Texas. On the right was Sophia, more casually dressed, in her San Diego living room. For a moment, no one spoke. Emma and Sophia stared at each other through the digital connection, mirror images separated by technology and time. "What is this?" Emma finally asked, her voice sharp with confusion. "Who is she? Why does she look like me?" Sophia seemed unable to speak, one hand covering her mouth in shock. Agent Chen took control. "Ms. Collins, Ms. Martinez, I'm Special Agent Diana Chen with the FBI. Thank you for joining this call. I know this is confusing, but I need you both to listen carefully. We've recently uncovered evidence in a criminal investigation involving Dr. Richard Holloway." "My childhood doctor?" Emma frowned. "What does that have to do with her?" She gestured toward Sophia's image. Chen continued professionally. "Evidence indicates that Dr. Holloway was operating an illegal child trafficking operation between 1990 and 2005, abducting children from their biological families and selling them to wealthy clients seeking to adopt." The color drained from both women's faces as understanding began to dawn. "According to our investigation," Chen continued, "you were both born Madison and Mackenzie Thompson. You're identical twins, abducted from your home in Portland, Oregon on June 15, 1999, when you were 8 years old." "That's impossible," Emma whispered. "I was born Emma Collins. I have birth certificates, school records." "Falsified," Chen explained gently. "Dr. Holloway created new identities for the children he sold." Sophia finally found her voice. "Are you saying my parents bought me?" "The Collins and Martinez families paid approximately $300,000 each to Dr. Holloway's foundation," Chen confirmed. "We're still determining their level of knowledge regarding the circumstances." Emma's face hardened. "This is absurd. My parents would never—" "They're not your parents," Sarah interjected, unable to remain silent any longer. Both women turned to look at her, seeing her for the first time. I'm Sarah Thompson. I'm your mother." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma and Sophia stared at her with identical expressions of shock and disbelief. "You had a crescent-shaped birthmark on your right shoulder," Sarah said to Emma. "And you," she turned to Sophia, "have the same mark on your left wrist, perfect mirror twins. You both loved strawberry ice cream but hated chocolate. Madison, Emma, you were afraid of thunderstorms. Mackenzie, Sophia, you used to sing to comfort her during storms." Emma's hand unconsciously moved to her shoulder, where the birthmark lay hidden beneath her blouse. Sophia stared at the mark on her wrist, as if seeing it for the first time. "This can't be real," Emma whispered, but doubt had crept into her voice. Chen slid forward a folder containing DNA results, birth certificates, and childhood photographs of the twins. "We have conclusive evidence. Dr. Holloway has been arrested and has partially confessed to his operation." "Why?" Sophia asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you telling us this now? We have lives, families." "Because you deserve the truth," Sarah said simply. "And because I've spent 20 years searching for you. I never stopped looking, never stopped loving you." Emma abruptly stood. "I need to process this. I need to talk to my—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "We understand this is overwhelming," Chen said. "We have resources to help you both navigate this situation." But Emma had already disconnected her call. Sophia remained, tears flowing freely now. "Did they know?" she asked Sarah. "Did the Martinez family know I was stolen?" "We're still investigating that," Chen answered carefully, "but initial evidence suggests they may have suspected the adoption wasn't entirely legitimate." Sophia nodded once, then she too disconnected. Sarah stared at the blank screens, the brief reunion over as quickly as it had begun. "They hate me," she whispered. "They're in shock," Marcus corrected gently. "Give them time." But time was the one thing Sarah had already given too much of, 20 years of it, lost forever. 3 days passed without word from either Emma or Sophia. Sarah moved through her daily routines like a ghost, checking her phone obsessively for messages that never came. The FBI kept her updated on the case. Holloway had been denied bail. The investigation was expanding to include other medical professionals who might have assisted him, but none of that mattered without her daughters. On the fourth morning, as Sarah prepared for her hospital shift, her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Emma standing on her porch, looking exhausted and uncertain. "Emma," Sarah breathed, hardly daring to believe she was real. "Madison," Emma corrected stiffly. "My name is Madison Thompson. At least it was. I need to understand what that means." Sarah stepped aside, inviting her in. Madison, she was trying to think of her that way now, entered cautiously, surveying the modest home with appraising eyes. "I flew in this morning," she explained. "I told my fiancé I needed space to process family issues. I haven't told him anything else." They sat in the living room, an awkward silence stretching between them. Sarah resisted the overwhelming urge to embrace her daughter, sensing Madison's need for distance. "I brought photo albums," Sarah offered. "If you want to see—" Madison nodded tersely. Sarah retrieved the albums from the shelf where they'd sat untouched for years. She opened to the first page. Madison and Mackenzie as newborns, swaddled in matching pink blankets. "That's us?" Madison asked, voice catching. "Yes, born 6 minutes apart. You were first, always the leader." They turned pages slowly, Sarah narrating each photograph. Birthdays, Christmases, first day of kindergarten. Madison listened intently, occasionally touching a photo as if to connect with the lost child she had been. "I remember some of this," she admitted, pausing at a picture of the twins building a snowman. "Not clearly, but feelings, fragments. I've had dreams about snow, but it rarely snows in Austin. It was the winter before you disappeared," Sarah explained. "You both insisted on making the snowman wear your father's favorite tie. He was furious until he saw how proud you were." Madison looked up sharply. "My father? Your husband? David Thompson. We divorced 2 years after you disappeared. The loss, it destroyed us. Where is he now?" "Seattle. Remarried, has 2 teenage sons." Sarah hesitated. "He doesn't know I found you. We haven't spoken in years." Madison nodded, processing this information about the biological father she couldn't remember. She turned another page, then stopped abruptly at a photograph of the twins blowing out candles on their 8th birthday, just 2 weeks before they vanished. "We look happy," she whispered. "You were," Sarah confirmed. "We all were." Madison closed the album suddenly, standing to pace the room. "The Collins, my parents and the people who raised me, they're devastated. They swear they didn't know. Say Holloway told them I was an orphan, that he handled all the paperwork through his foundation." "Do you believe them?" Sarah asked carefully. Madison's eyes flashed with anger and confusion. "I don't know what to believe anymore. My entire life has been a lie. My name, my history, my family, all fabricated. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" "No," Sarah admitted. "I can't imagine. I had a good life," Madison continued, voice breaking. "Private schools, college, travel. They loved me, still love me. How am I supposed to reconcile that with the fact that they bought me, that my presence in their life exists because I was stolen from yours?" Sarah moved closer, daring to take her daughter's hand. "You don't have to choose between us. Love isn't a finite resource." Madison didn't pull away, but her posture remained rigid. "Have you heard from Mackenzie, from Sophia?" "No," Sarah said. "Nothing. I found her online," Madison admitted. "We've been messaging. It's strange, talking to someone who feels familiar but is a complete stranger. We're meeting tomorrow. She's flying in." Hope flared in Sarah's chest. "Here? She's coming to Portland?" Madison nodded. "She wants to see the house where we grew up, where it happened." "I told her I'd go with her. Could I? I don't know," Madison interrupted. "This is overwhelming enough already. We need time to know each other first before we can figure out how you fit in." The words stung, but Sarah understood, of course. "Whatever you need." As Madison prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "Did you really never stop looking for us?" "Never," Sarah said firmly. "Not for a single day." Madison nodded, a mix of emotions crossing her face. "I'll call you. After I see Sophia. After we decide what happens next." After she left, Sarah sat among the scattered photo albums, crying for the first time since finding her daughters, not from grief, but from the complicated relief of knowing that, whatever happened next, they were finally making their own choices about their shared future. The federal courthouse buzzed with media activity as Sarah made her way through security checkpoints. Holloway's case had captured national attention, exposing vulnerabilities in adoption systems and raising disturbing questions about how many other children might have been trafficked through seemingly legitimate channels. Inside, Sarah found Madison and Sophia already seated in the gallery. heads bent close in conversation. The sight of her daughters together, identical profiles that she had once known better than her own face, still took her breath away, even after 2 weeks of cautious reunions and difficult conversations. They looked up as she approached, their expressions guarded but no longer hostile. Progress, however small. "The prosecutor wants to speak with us before the hearing," Madison informed her, ever the organized one. Some personality traits transcended even the most profound disruptions. In a private conference room, Assistant U.S. Attorney Eliza Warren outlined what to expect. Dr. Holloway has agreed to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for his cooperation in identifying other children and accomplices. Reduced charges? Sarah's anger flared. After what he did, he'll still serve at least 20 years, Warren assured her, but his cooperation is crucial. We've already identified 15 other children who were taken. 5 have been reunited with biological families. And the families who purchased these children, Sophia asked, the word clearly painful for her to use. Warren's expression tightened. That's complicated. Some genuinely believed they were participating in private adoptions. Others clearly suspected irregularities, but chose not to question them. We're evaluating each case individually. What about the Collins and Martinez families? Madison pressed. Based on the evidence and their cooperation, we don't anticipate criminal charges, Warren admitted, though civil litigation remains possible. The sisters exchanged glances, a silent communication developing between them despite their years apart. Neither seemed eager to pursue legal action against the only parents they could remember. In the courtroom, Holloway appeared diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his imperious demeanor replaced by the careful humility of a man trying to minimize his sentence. When he spotted Sarah sitting between her daughters, his composure briefly cracked. The proceedings moved swiftly. Holloway pleaded guilty to 18 counts of kidnapping, 37 counts of trafficking, and dozens of fraud charges. When given the opportunity to address the court, he offered a clinical apology that focused more on his misguided methods than the lives he had shattered. "I believed I was creating better outcomes," he stated, his voice steady. "I matched children with families who could provide advantages their biological parents could not. My error was in the methodology, not the intention." Sophia stood suddenly, unable to contain herself. "You stole our lives," she called out, tears streaming down her face. "Our memories, our identities, our choice. You didn't create better outcomes. You created trauma we're still trying to understand." The judge allowed her outburst without comment, then sentenced Holloway to 25 years without parole, effectively a life sentence for the 71-year-old doctor. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed for comments. Sarah watched with a mixture of pride and heartache as Madison and Sophia handled the questions with grace, describing themselves as survivors, not victims, and expressing hope for other families still searching for answers. When asked about their relationships with both sets of parents, Madison answered carefully, "We're navigating complicated waters. Both our biological mother and our adoptive parents are part of who we are now. We're forging new connections while honoring existing ones." Later, at a quiet restaurant away from the media frenzy, the 3 women sat together in the most relaxed configuration they had managed so far. 2 bottles of wine had softened the lingering awkwardness. "Robert and Margaret want to meet you," Madison told Sarah suddenly. The Collins. They say they owe you an apology, even if they didn't know." Sarah nodded slowly. "I'd like that." "The Martinez family is still struggling," Sophia admitted. "They've gone to stay with relatives in Mexico for a while. I think they feel ashamed." "And you?" Sarah asked gently. "How do you feel?" Sophia considered the question. "Like I'm meeting myself for the first time, both the 8-year-old girl I was and the woman I might have become in a different life." Madison reached across the table to squeeze her sister's hand. "At least we have each other now. Whatever else Holloway took, we've reclaimed that." The simple gesture brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Her daughters were rebuilding their bond, creating something new from the fragments of what had been stolen. It wasn't the family she had lost, but perhaps it could become something equally precious, a family tempered by adversity and chosen through understanding. As they parted that evening, Madison hesitated, then embraced Sarah briefly. "We're planning to visit the old house tomorrow, the backyard. Would you come with us?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak through her tears. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, the first delicate bridge across 20 years of absence. The house looked smaller than Madison and Sophia remembered. Standing on the sidewalk, The three women studied the modest two-story craftsman with its cheerful yellow door, now belonging to a young family with tricycles on the porch and a swing set visible in the backyard. "We used to race from that oak tree to the front steps," Madison said suddenly, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. "I always won." "Because you cheated," Sophia replied automatically, then looked startled at her own words. I remember that. You would count 1, 2, 3, go all as one word." Sarah watched this exchange with wonder. The doctors had explained that childhood memories, while suppressed by trauma and time, might resurface in fragments when the twins were together, each one's recollections triggering the others. The current owners had graciously agreed to let them visit when Sarah explained the situation. A young woman opened the door at their knock, a toddler balanced on her hip. "You must be the Thompsons," she said warmly. "I'm Kate. Please come in." They moved through the house like archaeologists, studying a long-buried civilization. The layout remained largely unchanged, though the decor had been modernized. In the kitchen, Sophia traced her fingers along the counter. "Mom used to let us make pancakes here on Sundays," she said softly. "We'd make a terrible mess." Sarah nodded, throat tight. "You insisted on adding food coloring. Blue was your favorite." "The backyard is through here," Kate offered, leading them through the kitchen door. The yard had been landscaped differently, but the dimensions remained the same. The old oak tree still stood sentinel in the corner, its branches now supporting a wooden treehouse. The back gate had been replaced with a sturdier version, its latch well out of a child's reach. Madison moved to the center of the yard, eyes closed. "This is where we were playing. I remember a tea party for our dolls." "And a man called over the fence," Sophia continued, joining her sister. "He said he lost his puppy, asked if we could help look for it." Sarah hung back, allowing them this moment of recovered memory. The twins stood side by side, identical even in the way they tilted their heads while thinking. "He said his name was Uncle Jack," Madison recalled. "Said he knew our parents, that's why we trusted him. When we opened the gate, there was another man waiting in a van," Sophia whispered. "They put something over our faces. It smelled sweet." "Chloroform," Sarah supplied quietly. "The police found traces on your dolls." The sisters turned toward her, their expressions mirroring each other's pain and confusion. "Why didn't we remember any of this before?" Madison asked. "Trauma-induced memory suppression," Sarah explained, "especially common in children. Plus, Holloway admitted they kept you sedated for days afterward, repeating your new names and histories until you began to accept them." Sophia shuddered. "They stole our minds along with our bodies. They remained in the yard for nearly an hour, memories continuing to surface, birthday parties, summer sprinklers, winter snowball fights. The tapestry of their shared childhood slowly being rewoven, incomplete but precious." As they prepared to leave, Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out 2 small velvet pouches. "I've been saving these, waiting for the right moment." Inside each pouch was half of a heart-shaped pendant, worn smooth from years of being held. "You were making these for each other," Sarah explained, "for your 8th birthday. You never finished them." Madison and Sophia took their respective halves, fitting them together to form a single heart. The simple silver pendants, tarnished with age, seemed to embody their entire story, broken apart, but capable of becoming whole again. "Thank you," Madison whispered, slipping the chain over her head. As they walked back to the car, Sophia hesitated, then took Sarah's hand. "We want to try," she said simply, "to build something new. It won't be what we had before, but it can still be beautiful," Sarah finished, squeezing her daughter's hand. In the dappled afternoon light, the 3 women stood together. Not the family that had been shattered 20 years ago, but a new constellation formed from the same stars, rearranged by time and circumstance into something different, but equally meaningful. Madison smiled at her sister, then at Sarah. "Not an ending," she said softly. "A beginning." "Recomeços," Sophia agreed, using the Portuguese word for new beginnings she had learned from her Martinez grandmother. "That's what we're making here." As they drove away from the house that had held both their greatest joy and deepest tragedy, Sarah felt the weight of 20 years of searching finally begin to lift. Her daughters were beside her, changed, grown, still healing, but present in ways she had only dreamed possible. Some journeys ended exactly where they began, but with everyone transformed by the path taken to return home.